Chris? Sorry, you're muted. Sorry, I had to run to the microphone. It took me half a minute. You're still muted. We don't hear you. We heard you before. Ah,
yes.
Now it's fine.
Okay, I'm back.
Now it's fine. Yes.
All right. Maybe it was the sharing of the screen. My apologies. I routinely put satellites in space, but can I actually share my screen? That's somewhat beyond me. All right, let's try again. So I'm using a Chrome tab. All right, there we go. And
yeah, indeed. It's like when you share the screen, you get muted. It's like weird.
Share. Well,
oh.
Yes.
So we have the slides, Chris. So if you want,
please.
I can just
Thank you. Thank you, Karen.
Figure out how to get the slides here.
Thank you.
We have it on the Indico website. Okay.
And it's a pleasure to see you there, Dr. Johnny.
This, yes, that's the slide. So if you can, yeah, I can operate. But Chris, can you see the slides as well?
I cannot. I can see Jan. Oh no, I can see myself, but I can see the slide. I can go from memory, Dr. Johnny. So that would be.
No, we can.
I think you will put it on.
Thing is doing it 1 second.
Okay, now.
There we go.
Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Johnny. So everybody, this is arguably a new era in science from the moon. Opportunities are opening up and they're available today. And it's thanks to the NASA CLIPS missions. Dr. Johnny, please, next slide, please. And really, it's the opportunities that we have. Oh, go back one, please, Dr. Johnny. Thank you. There are many countries headed to the moon at the moment. We have missions from Japan, Korea, India, Israel, China, of course, the American missions, European missions, Canadian missions. There are more missions headed to the moon today than there have been at any other time in human history, even before the early days of Apollo and the Soviet explorations. But what is unique about these NASA commercial lunar payload service missions is that they have created a marketplace, and in so doing have radically reduced the time and cost to put an experiment on the moon, in the moon, or around the moon. Next slide, please, Dr. Johnny. Thank you. And you will say to yourselves, but can science be conducted from the moon? Isn't that something that we did 50 years ago? Is it something that was just so far beyond the realm? Well, no. I mean, today we have experiments from the Chinese missions, and the Chinese are working on very long baseline interferometry and radio astronomy with the Dutch already in operation. Some minor issues, but it's a step forward. And as of, I believe today, the Chinese have been operational, continuous operation of their science experiments on Chang'e 4 and their circumnavigation of the South Asian Basin for over 1,000 days. So this isn't something hypothetical. This is not theoretical. This is really something quite practical. And the opportunities are there for yourselves. And we're talking missions to the moon in terms of 2 to 3 years away, as opposed to 10 to 15 to 20 years. So within the realm of a dissertation, within the realm of a thesis, within the realm of a PhD. Next slide, please, Dr. Johnny. And this is one of the reasons why, finally, it's taken a generation to get this fixed. As you know, science from the surface of the moon was the original raison d'etre for the Apollo program. The reason to go to the moon in the first place was supposed to be science. It changed with the Cold War, the flags and footprints and national priorities, but we have turned a corner, we hope. And as I said, with all of those countries going back to date, they have committed over $174 billion in funding to return to the moon. And yes, this is returning people through the Artemis programs. It is returning rovers and science and more to the moon, but they have committed it. This is active programs underway. And this is where the opportunity for science appears. Next slide, please, Dr. Jani. So we have the Artemis program. I imagine that you're well aware of this. I won't go into too much detail. Needless to say, that there are now 9 nations involved in the Artemis program itself. They are looking at a human return to the moon. Whether that is in 2024 or 25 or 26 has yet to be seen. But you have private companies from SpaceX to Blue Origin to Lockheed Martin and others competing on one set of lunar lander contracts. And you've seen the controversy with various lawsuits flying around, but funding now delivered. And the Space Launch System out of NASA as well, but also driving a lot of innovation and the preparation to return to the moon. So the Chinese are also looking at a permanent human habitation. Artemis, of course, with America, Europe, Canada, Japan, South Korea, and India doing the same thing. So it is a new era going forward. But you would be right to be skeptical. You would be right to say, well, we've seen this before. We've seen lots of wonderful press releases. We've seen lots of nice things said by politicians. But is this a real opportunity for us in the scientific community? Next slide, please, Dr. Jani. Well, I would argue that yes, that this is a new golden age of lunar and solar system exploration, predominantly because of this one program in support of the Artemis missions, which again have been confirmed by President Biden as going forward. In support of Artemis, there is a range of pathfinding missions going ahead, much the same way that Lunar Surveyor preceded the Apollo missions. These missions are under a program called the Commercial Lunar Payload Services contract. You'll see that acronym CLPS used many times. The key word here is commercial. NASA has used a new contracting mechanism to allow it to go forward and commercially procure a series of missions. These are ongoing missions. NASA has committed $2.9 billion to these missions. And that is in a set-aside, as they say. It allows companies to come and bid for these missions when NASA is just the customer. It's a very large customer. It's a very important customer, but it's a customer. When NASA actually takes the majority, say 50 to 70% of the payload mass on a series of lunar landers built by different companies competing with each other. And it's the additional mass left over that is available for commerce and science. And that's what's creating the opportunity. Next picture, please, Dr. Jani. So at present, 14 different companies are in the contracting mechanism to allow NASA to award missions to them. The ones who have come to the forefront and have been awarded the first 6 missions are Intuitive Machines of Houston, Texas. You've got Astrobotic of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Firefly of Austin, Texas, and Maston of Mojave, California. Intuitive Machines has been awarded 2 missions, I think about $77 million each. Astrobotic has been awarded about $150 million worth of missions, Maston about 100, and Firefly, I think, just under 100 million. But the key is they're building and they're active and they're moving forward with launch dates. Next slide, please, Dr. Jani. So I know it wouldn't be a lecture on space science or space science opportunities without wonderful photographs, or what they call the PowerPoint part of missions. Up there, you've got the Intuitive Machines Nova C, top left. Bottom left, you've got the Peregrine from Astrobotic. and Firefly and Masten's proposed landers as well. But this isn't just a PowerPoint opportunity. Next slide, please, Dr. Johnny. These systems are built. We have actually at our company, Lone Star, we've actually gone out to meet with, we're buying, by the way, Lone Star, we are actually buying time on these landers for science. So we've actually gone to meet all of the CLIPS providers in person, toured their factories, seen their work. That's the Nova C there, and the main picture to the left there is a Peregrine lander from Astrobotic. And it's amazing what's happening. So on Astrobotic's first, Intuitive Machines' first launch in March, they are carrying science, but science at a fraction of the cost and the time for normal missions. Dr. Jack Burns from the University of Colorado is actually taking a radio astronomy experiment in cooperation with the National Radio Astronomy Observatory. And they're able to put this together in, say, 24 months at a fraction of the cost. And why do I keep saying this? Because it's almost a changing of gears. It's an exponential application of opportunity to the science community. And next slide, please, Dr. Johnny. Because, for example, this Nova C first mission, those long poles that you see emanating from the bottom of the lander, that's the radio astronomy experiment. On that mission, there are several experiments paid for by NASA, yes, but also paid for privately, yes, and paid for by foundations, yes. And the time scale has gone from, well, infinite, to go back to the moon, to the finite of actually preparing your experiment and getting it to the provider in less than 24 months, which means a turnaround in science. And instead of paying $100 million to take an experiment to the moon, those flying payloads, like hosted payloads, those flying payloads with these CLIPS providers, you're paying a fraction of that. So the time and cost has been radically reduced. And that is the opportunity. That is what's changed. It's still the government's underwriting the missions. It's still the foundations paying for this. But it's the ability to get more efficiency out of every dollar spent. Next slide, please, Dr. Johnny. And so private industry has become a catalyst for changing and lowering launch costs, expanding these services and capabilities and technologies. Yes, this also rides on the fact that companies like SpaceX have been able to radically reduce launch costs through reusability of their launch vehicles. That NASA has taken this bold step on changing its contracting mechanisms to allow smaller, faster companies to come in. And this in turn opens up this opportunity for yourselves. It really is something quite startling, because you do not have to be an American company or an American university. Of course you can be, but you don't have to be. Anyone from any nation is able to buy rides on these vehicles. So next slide, please. So again, this is the evolution of how this has happened very quickly. If you're familiar with the NASA COTS, commercial off the shelf, where they first awarded SpaceX and I think Orbital Sciences, now Northrop, a contract to take cargo to the space station. It was very unique. It was the end of the space shuttle program. NASA said we need to do things differently, but this laid the foundation of the idea that that NASA would buy commercial services. And then throw in, when we're talking of the moon, the Google Lunar X Prize, the GLXP, because that was also an initiator for the creation of many of these small companies, well, companies like Masten and Astrobotic, because it created an ecosystem of small companies taking landers to the moon, which then allowed NASA to use COTS as a contracting mechanism to provide us and take us to CLIPS. So it's a strong foundation of strong companies with a strong ability to reduce cost and take things to the moon. By the way, Lone Star, that's not us. We're actually a customer of these. And talking to Dr. Johnny and others in the community, that's when it became apparent that, yes, what we took for granted, of course, you can do these things much faster and cheaper. It was like, oh my goodness. That's right, this is news, because we're looking at commercial applications and commercial science and other elements there, but it allows us to take things to the moon very, very rapidly. I'll give you an example. We're about to contract with one of these providers to take an experiment to us for the moon next December. That means our runway, our preparation time is 14 months from product development, test, well, development, build, test, application. For us is a 14-month cycle, which is a radical change and at a radically reduced price point too. Please, next slide, please, Dr. Johnny. You might say, well, Chris, that's wonderful. However, well, how many of these missions are there? Well, to date, if you imagine yourself at the airport or the train station, you're looking at the trains and the airplanes getting ready to go. That's our flight status at the moment. You've got flights, looks like 3 flights next year, probably 3 flights in 2023, and at least 1, if not 2 flights in 2024. And NASA is adding providers and missions every couple of months. So instead of buying from just one provider, you now have several who will compete for your business, who want your business to take you to the moon. Next slide, please, Dr. Johnny. And so what they provide isn't just the transportation to the moon. They provide power, communications, and everything is priced per kilogram. So again, you're not paying $100 million for the spacecraft. You're not paying 62 million for the launch vehicle. They're taking care of that. NASA is paying the majority of the freight as the largest customer. And you are able to take time on these landers with rovers and other elements to do science. And they provide power, communications, and they'll price it per kilogram. Public domain pricing, Astrobotic is running at $1.2 million per kilogram. That's from their website. Next slide, please. And so they've created a lunar market where you as a scientist and as a provider, you are now the most important person in the equation. They bid for your attention, your payload, your science. They want you to be successful, because if you're successful, they are successful, they might get a second or third mission with you. So science is no longer a secondary consideration. It is now the prime consideration, because you are the prime customers to go back to the moon. So flipping back to those early days of Apollo, it has come full circle in a quite fitting and proper way, where the cost of returning to the moon is radically reduced, where the time to get a mission is radically reduced, and the availability has increased exponentially. It's almost as if we've gone from a time of scarcity to a time of abundance for science on the lunar surface and in lunar orbit. The Chinese and Dutch are active at the moment. NASA, the first mission for CLIPS, is launching in March 2022, and then a cadence thereafter. I would suggest that it does take a moment to sort of appreciate what has changed and how radically it's changed, and what this means for opportunities for flight and missions to fly and instrumentation to fly. But if that's the one thing I wanted to leave you with today for your discussions going forward, that a doorway has opened. It is a radical new doorway. It is the ability to disrupt the traditional timing of missions to the moon and for opportunities for science. And I know I'm repeating myself, but I do so because I wanted to drive those points home. That yourselves watching and sitting in the room today, part of the gravitational wave experiments, because the moon is such a lovely, quiet place to do these things. All of a sudden, you have Earth's largest satellite at your disposal at a fraction of the cost, aircraft waiting on the runway to take your experiments there, and they would be delighted to talk to you and to realize and facilitate your science. Thank you very much. Dr. Johnny, the last slide, please. And it really was to say, imagine yourselves, well, maybe not in person, maybe yes or no, but imagine your experiments there, looking back at 8 billion people on the surface of the planet, and they can create their lovely noise and do their wonderful things there, where we all live in this beautiful paradise called Earth. Whereas your experiments can be on a beautiful, stable, remote surface that has no weather, where you can observe 24 hours a day. And it's a lovely, quiet place for gravitational waves. And Dr. Johnny, with that, thank you very much for having me today. I hope I've kept to time. And if there's any questions, of course, but I'm at your disposal.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Chris. This was it was a great overview on the how the economics has changed now to go to moon. Any questions people have? Okay, let's start with Jan.
Thanks, Chris, for this wonderful talk. So CLIPS is a very well-defined program. But getting to the surface of the moon is one thing, but then of course, doing things there requires more infrastructure, sometimes very generic purpose infrastructure like powering your experiment, all of that. Do you think that, this...
Sorry, it's me.
There's some feedback, I don't know where it comes from. It was you, okay, good, stop now. Do you think that there's a chance that, okay, I assume we can probably assume that all the other infrastructure development will be accelerated, maybe also even by the CLIPS program indirectly, because people are starting to think what they might be able to do on the moon, but who maybe didn't feel involved in the past because of the cost. But do you think there might be programs similar to CLIPS where certain services can be provided of, general purpose infrastructure on the moon? Is there already something planned, or is CLIPS everything that is, offered in the foreseeable future?
No, thank you. Excellent question. No, you're quite right, because CLIPS, the landers are relatively small, and they provide some infrastructure themselves. No, but yeah, infrastructure is everything. And hopefully the answer is yes, because the CLIPS program is going to be growing, larger landers, and then the Artemis program landing system is kicking into gear as well. So for the Artemis program, there are plans for common infrastructure, not only in orbit and for communications and navigation, but also on the surface for the provision of power, storage, batteries, and shelter. One of the others, of course, I'm sorry, you guys, of course, you know this, but it's surviving the lunar night is a huge question for electronics and batteries. And the Chinese have done this, and a massive congratulations to them for doing so. And so it is now up to us to emulate that technology and emulate that activity. So we don't want to just survive in the lunar night, we need to thrive. So for 24/7 operations every day of the year. Some of that is depending on where on the moon you go. But yes, if all goes well, infrastructure is to be made available and is growing forward. And a key point, the United States just went through a rather contentious election from President Trump to President Biden. And in the past, you've seen, especially on plans for Mars and the moon, different parties take different positions where they would cancel programs or start other programs. And it was like a pendulum swinging backwards and forwards. But for the first time since the Apollo program, you have two very different presidents, two very different administrations, but both confirming progress and going forward with the Artemis program. And so, yes, they still have to build it, but I would say yes is the answer, and to an excellent question. And the plans are for common infrastructure, power, communications, navigation, shelter, and more.
Anyone else has a question? If not, I had one quick question, Chris. Let's say for scientific proposals like the one that we are discussing in this meeting, what's the best way to sort of outreach with the industries? Is it that we still go through NASA calls and then, eventually, make it way to an industry, or do we directly, is there a way to get industry interested in this kind of a science?
No, thank you. Excellent question, Dr. Johnny. Do you know, I would say a bit of both, because of course I think the NASA proposals will be changing a little bit. They'll be accelerating their pace, but also a direct conversation with industry is very much now possible, especially if the traditional university consortiums are maintained to ensure that the primary investigators get their data in the fashion that they wish. But yes, this is very much a blank sheet of paper going forwards. The ability to apply exponential change to accelerate science and to accelerate results for primary investigators it's a wonderful moment. No, so thank you. No, excellent question. Yes, direct contact with industry is I would very much encourage that, because it is definitely the way forward.
And I think that's something we look forward, as we have the technologies being developed at a stage where we can have direct conversation, at least with the ones that, the top ones that you mentioned. Anyone else?
Yeah. Oh.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say it's like a snowball at the top of a mountain. It's started, it's rolled down, and those opportunities are growing daily. So thank you. It's an excellent question.
Anyone else has a question? If not, Stavros has it. Oh, you heard? Okay. Okay, then I think we can thank the speaker again, and then we would move on with our agenda. Thank you, Chris, for being there.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Hope to see you soon in person. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Our next speaker is the Vice President of IFN, the Vice Director of IFN, and also President of the Ego Council. He wanted to say a few words to our workshop. But Marco, we have to tell you, that has been quite exciting up to now. I think it was, for all of us, we learned a lot. At least I have learned a lot. I think everybody agrees with that. So please, Marco, tell us. We don't hear you. You're muted.
Can you hear me well?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so thank you very much for this invitation. Let me apologize first for not being there, but we have an important international event in Venezia right now, so I am actually in the middle of that. And but I was really, and I am very happy to say a few words to thank all of you for this first important workshop on this activity. Of course, it's a long-term dream, but we are used to dreaming about gravitational waves. It was a dream 30 years ago to start Virgo, and we finally got to the discovery. And now it's time also to think about the future. Of course, Ego and the Council and all the community is very focused to keep Virgo running, to improve it, to upgrade it. But also we have to look forward. So this idea of using the whole moon as a vibrating bar is fantastic. It's a dream. Of course, it's let me say, I hope it's a realistic dream, in the sense that I'm sure that you are working to make it real, to make it a feasible project. But even if it's going to be hard or it's going to be long, it's worth doing. So I think that INFN has proven to be able to be patient, to be able to look far in the future. So we keep doing by supporting this initial activity of this dream, and at the same time working very hard to run Virgo and to build the Einstein telescope, which will be the next ground-based dream. Even that is a dream for different reasons, but it's going to be a long way to go, even that one. But we have to be convinced that this is a new science that deserves such important effort and investment. So thank you all. I don't see you right now. I see the desk only, but I'm sure the room is crowded, and I wish you all the best for this 2 days of activity. So thanks.
Thank you very much, Mark. So by the sound you hear that we're enough.
Good, good.
So then before passing to Andreas, who is the head of Apec, let's go through Vincent Poirot, who is the deputy director of IN2P3, responsible for astroparticle and cosmology, and we finish with Andreas.
Yes, hello, good afternoon, everyone. Yes, I am Vincent Poirot. I am a scientific director for astroparticle and cosmology at CNRS IN2P3. I was not able to make it in person in this workshop, sorry for that, due to some conflict in the agenda. René Alpin, the director of IN2P3, would love to say a few words, but unfortunately is now in a meeting. So I will say a few words for IN2P3. First of all, we were very impressed by the level of interest, and I think the high level of participation in this workshop. So this is very nice. You know that IN2P3 is engaged in gravitational wave since a very long time, at least in the 90s. We have gravitational wave. There are strong links with astrophysics, fundamental physics, cosmology. So this is a very important physics for IN2P3. And of course, we are involved in Virgo Ego. We have many researchers, engineers, technicians working in this experiment with 6 IN2P3 laboratories, plus more laboratories from CNRS. We are deeply involved, as you know, in Advanced Virgo Plus, phase 1 and phase 2 for the upgrade. And of course, IN2P3 wants to be a part of Einstein Telescope. Einstein Telescope is the future for the ground-based interferometer. And so we have many researchers already involved in Einstein Telescope, so we will be part of it. And we are also part of a LISA telescope in space with 6 laboratories working in this in LISA. So we love gravitational waves, and so of course when we heard about this project, LWGA, LSGA, GLOC, they are in fact indeed a very interesting new concepts. It's effectively like a dream, as said Marco, hopefully a realistic dream, and it's nice to see that it covers the different band of frequency. And so it's kind of a bridge between LISA and Einstein Telescope. So this is very nice to see that we will have new physics covered. So in conclusion, I will say that IN2P3 will continue to invest in gravitational wave, even if we have to follow the community up to the moon. You know, we have a French agency, the CNES, and we are a French space agency, and we are sure that they will want to come with us also for this big adventure to the moon. So thank you very much. I wish you a very fruitful meeting. So you are, of course, we are toward the end of the meeting, but have a very nice meeting and fruitful discussion. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And now we come to Andreas Hanks, who's the chair of Apec, who gathers the chief agencies of Europe working in astroparticle physics, cosmology, and not only, even beyond. Many of them also particle physics, nuclear physics, and what have you. So Andreas.
Yeah, hello everybody, and to the participants of this workshop, which I was not all the time at this workshop, but I could listen some of the talks, and I found it very interesting. So I'm a representative of Apec, and this is a consortium of astroparticle physics in Europe, and we represent somehow 20 countries and 27 funding agencies. And one of our most important tasks is to evaluate the European strategy, but as Stavros said, even beyond, of needed research in the field of astroparticle physics. I mean, that means one of our main tasks is to create and to provide to the community a roadmap. And this is including some scientific prioritization, not only just a summary of the research field, but including scientific prioritization based on our knowledge of possible resources. And one example of here, one of the hot topics is, of course, the detection of gravitational waves. And here we have this large-scale future project of Einstein telescope, and which is now even a S3 infrastructure. So this is already a very good success in direction of the Einstein telescopes. We also focus on coordination and support of large-scale infrastructures, mainly in Europe, but not only. Everywhere, we try to support and coordinate such infrastructures when European astroparticle physicists are participating and using this infrastructure. And again, here, of course, one example is currently where we put a lot of effort is the Einstein telescope. And as I said, with the first success of that is now an S3 infrastructure. Another task of our activities is communication and fostering synergies with adjacent fields. And again, I have an example, and this is a recent relatively close cooperation with the geophysics and community, which was initiated by Stavros, and also this workshop somehow is a immediate follow-up of this first synergetic sampling of ideas and fostering these ideas. And this is very important also for Apec, that we have these synergies with adjacent fields, not only with particle physics, which is somehow obvious, or astrophysics, which is also already in the name of astroparticle physics. These three examples, which I have given, was not chosen at random, of course, but directly reflect the Apec's interest in the topics of this workshop here and the research field which you cover as a whole. Therefore, I can conclude that I wish you a lot of success, and what I have seen so far from the workshop is going in a very good direction and of a very nice cooperation between this wide, diverse research fields which are needed to finally detect gravitational waves at the moon. So we are looking forward on further developments, and you can be sure that Apec will always try to support these ideas and to foster the research in this direction. Good luck, and thank you for giving me the possibility to address these few words to this workshop.
Thank you very much. Very good. Good. Thank you very much, all of you, for taking your time to say these all very encouraging words. So we can liberate you, or you can follow right now. There is, as we said, either a free discussion here for some time, and those of you that would like to visit Virgo, please, it will be Valerio Boschi who would be glad to show you around. Then don't forget, 4 o'clock, be back for coffee, and immediately afterwards we have all equally important interventions from key people from ESA and NASA and the academies, national academies.